Welcome to the AI for Career Success podcast by Curt Robbins, where we help you get smarter than your competition. This is episode 145.
I'm Daphne.
And I'm Fred.
And today we're looking at a really stunning corporate reversal.
A huge one. A massive company just completely scrapped a multi-million-dollar AI tool.
Right. And this story, it really gets to the heart of AI transparency and what happens when you treat consumer trust as sort of an afterthought.
Exactly. This episode was actually suggested by our producer, Curt Robbins, because it's such a critical case study for working professionals. Really, anyone in a field that touches data or strategy or AI.
Yeah, definitely. So our discussion is based on reports that came out on December 22nd, 2025.
And we're pulling from a number of sources here. Articles from Laura Stewart, Annie Palmer, Dominique W., and Samantha Iannucci on LinkedIn.
And also some really important reporting from CNBC, CBS News, Consumer Reports, the Groundwork Collaborative, and More Perfect Union.
So let's jump in. The company is Instacart.
And they just announced, very suddenly, that they are immediately ending the use of a powerful AI-driven pricing system.
This wasn't some minor test. This was an abrupt, decisive move.
It signals a pretty big failure, much bigger than just a product launch that didn't go well.
So tell us about the tech. What exactly was this tool?
Well, the tool was called Eversight.
Eversight.
Yeah, and Instacart acquired it back in 2022 for $59 million.
Wow, so a pretty hefty investment.
A very substantial one. And the goal, at least the stated goal, was, well, it seemed pretty reasonable on the surface.
Which was?
To help retailers boost sales and, help customers find good deals.
Optimizing prices, basically.
Exactly. But here's the core of the whole controversy. This is the reason they had to scrap that $59 million investment.
Okay.
Eversight was allowing some retailers to charge different prices for the exact same item.
In the same store.
In the same store,
Yeah.
at the same time.
So two different people could be looking at the same jar of coffee
Right.
on their phones in the same aisle and see two different prices.
That's it. That's the problem. And that distinction is it's so important.
Right. It's not just regular dynamic pricing like for flights or something.
No, this was individualized price testing. And the investigations that brought this to light showed the financial impact wasn't small at all.
Consumer Reports did a study, right?
They did. And they found roughly a 7% price variation for the same basket of goods, just comparing different users.
7%. I mean, that doesn't sound like a huge number at first glance.
You'd think so, right? But when you apply that to a family's annual grocery bill,
Okay, then it adds up.
it adds up to over $1,000 in additional costs per year.
$1,000. Wow.
For shoppers who were, just algorithmically disadvantaged. And this wasn't a bug.
It was a feature.
It was a feature that prioritized maximizing profit over just having one fair price.
And I heard some of the data was even more extreme.
Oh, it gets much worse. The Groundwork Collaborative, they reported finding price swings of up to 23%.
23% on groceries.
During their tests at major retailers. It just shows you how much leeway this AI was given.
And how unfair it could be, based on calculations you can't even see.
And there was one anecdote that really stood out from Samantha Iannucci.
What happened there?
She noticed these huge price differences when she was shopping with her grandmother in a small town, Hubbard, Ohio.
Okay.
And she compared those prices to a nearby, wealthier suburb, Boardman. The prices in the smaller town were, on average, 33% higher.
43% on necessity.
Exactly. And that was hitting seniors who were just buying the basics. That kind of difference is really hard to justify with, supply chain optimization.
So how was it actually working? What was the mechanism?
So the AI was essentially running millions of tiny experiments, testing different price points to see what people would tolerate.
A giant A/B test.
A giant A/B test, but its real job was what you could call price sensitivity mapping.
And the company called this?
What?
Personalization.
Personalization,
Yeah.
customization, comforting words, right. But the reality is the algorithm was just calculating the absolute maximum amount each person might be willing to pay.
And that's the line. The difference between optimizing a market and exploiting a customer.
It's a knife's edge, and if you're a professional working with AI, you have to know where it is.
The second you shift into that kind of price discrimination, you're just inviting regulatory backlash.
Absolutely.
Let's take a brief break for a special message from our producer, Curt Robbins.
Hi, this is Curt Robbins. First, thanks for listening. I truly appreciate your support. I want to let you know that I'm currently accepting new clients. My rates are affordable, and I have more than 25 years of experience working for enterprise companies like Microsoft, Northrop Grumman, Oracle, PNC Bank, FedEx, USAA, and Wells Fargo, among many others. If you want to improve your IT documentation and communications, hire me. I deliver fast, know how to use AI to improve efficiency and accuracy, and love going the extra mile to satisfy my clients. Thank you for subscribing and listening. Back to you, Daphne and Fred.
Welcome back to the AI for Career Success podcast.
Okay, so before the break, we were just getting into the shocking size of these price discrepancies.
Right, sometimes as high as 33%, often hitting the most vulnerable consumers.
So now let's talk about the fallout, the inevitable consequences of this.
Well, the moment these findings went public, the scrutiny was intense and fast.
It wasn't just angry customers on social media.
No, this was government pressure. The decision to pull the plug on the tool happened right as investigations were ramping up.
The FTC was involved.
There's an active FTC probe, and they were getting rebukes from state lawmakers.
And for any professional listening, that's the real takeaway here. Opacity, it just equals regulatory pressure.
And Instacart was already, under a microscope.
Right. This wasn't their first issue.
Not at all. This whole $59 million failure came right after they'd already faced a $60 million refund settlement over other deceptive practice claims.
So it's a pattern.
It's a pattern that really points to a breakdown in their data governance strategy.
And their relationship with public trust, obviously.
Of course. And their official response, the one they put out in a blog post, is really a masterclass in corporate defense.
What did they say?
They claim the technology was not generating dynamic pricing based on personal, demographic, or behavioral data.
They tried to distance themselves from the whole idea of surveillance pricing.
Completely.
Yeah.
But that denial is it's immediately suspicious if you have any technical background.
Because how else do you get that kind of price difference?
Exactly. How do you get a 33% price difference between two shoppers nearby buying the same thing without using some kind of behavioral input?
Even if it's not explicit demographic data.
Right. Things like your IP address, how often you buy, what kind of device you're on, these are all proxies for behavioral data. They did admit the tests missed the mark for some customers and raised concerns.
And then they had that quote, something about trust and transparency.
Yeah. That's not okay, especially for a company built on trust, transparency, and affordability.
Which sounds less like an apology for an ethical lapse and more like an admission that the optics were just terrible for their brand.
And their stock price.
Right. So this brings us directly to our audience. Why should you, as a professional, care about this grocery app story?
Because the fundamental question here is huge. All of these sources are asking, are we entering an era where AI is just focused on maximizing what every single person can pay?
Instead of finding a fair, stable market price for everyone.
Exactly. This Instacart story is just a very expensive, very public case study in the ROI of ethical design.
If you're in strategy, if you're a product developer, this shows you the direct link between opaque AI and serious consequences.
FTC probes, reputational damage, and, having to just write off a $59 million piece of tech.
You can't run a P&L sheet without factoring in the cost of getting this stuff wrong.
And for data governance professionals, the lesson is profound. It's not enough for your models to be optimized for profit anymore.
They have to be auditable for fairness.
You have to be able to answer the question, is this price difference because of operational efficiency, or is it because we calculated someone's maximum vulnerability?
If you can't answer that, your project is a massive liability.
One source summed it up with a pretty chilling line. We're headed for a future where every company charges you the maximum you're able to pay.
That's a very unstable, adversarial kind of economy.
The moment every transaction feels like you're negotiating against an all-knowing algorithm, that social license to operate it evaporates.
And when that happens, regulation is coming.
It's inevitable. And understanding where that line is, that's the essential skill now. This raises the question of whether necessities like food should be treated differently than, say, luxury goods.
Should they be protected from these kinds of private pricing algorithms?
It's a question you need to be asking in your own industry. Because if your AI strategy is based on maximizing tolerance instead of defining a fair value,
you need to be anticipating that next wave of regulation right now.
Because the public's trust for that kind of operation is clearly gone. The takeaway for you to think about is this. You have to design AI systems for transparency and fairness from day one.
Because the cost of trying to add ethics later, or dealing with the fallout when you don't, it will always be massively higher than any short-term profit you might make.
Thank you for listening to the AI for Career Success podcast from Curt Robbins, where we help you get smarter than your competition.
Remember to like, subscribe, comment, and share. We'll see you next time.